Welcome back to the second part of the how-to video. So in the previous part I explained the basic outline of the worksheet, and I set up the basic annual plan just for an example. I kind of updated it while I was away, sort of speaking, and as you can see, here's the updated version. For an example, we have a preparatory period, competition period, and an off-season. I put the different phases: GPP, SPP, early season, qualifications and playoffs, and in the off-season I put active recovery. I also set up the peaking index, starting from a 4 during the early GPP, proceeding to 5, up to 6 in the SPP, and building up or up to the playoffs, where during the playoffs you want to be at the best shape. For active recovery, it's basically 1 to 3, which you're going to use to physically and mentally recover the squad. In a game competition calendar, I put first couple of friendly games during the SPP period in a preparatory period phase. I also put the heat training camp. I don't know, might be altitude, but this is just an example. When the season started, the first game is away. And we have, in the next week, we have 2 games. One is a home, one is an away, and up proceeding to playoffs. Please take notice that this is only an example. So take it as it is. If you want to plan maybe playing B squads league or giving friendly games for reserves, because they also need some playing time, we can enter some friendly games over here. For them, as you can see, as I said in a previous installment, each training component has a common box describing the type of the microcycle, and as you can see, it immediately take this information from annual plan into account. So in this week, I immediately get a kind of a notification. How many games do I have in that week? So I did a simple color coding. If I have 1 game, that's orange, 2 games and 3 games, it's red. All those other games, game 4 in this case, for under 21 or B squad, they're not taken into this account. One thing you can do, and it's a pretty simple solution. So for example, if you scroll down, you can see the whole sheet scrolling and also going sideways. When you start filling up the cells, you might lose a picture of the annual plan. And to fix this, you can either use these indicators. You get some idea of how many games are happening over here, or you might do this. You click on this one and go to review, I don't know how is this called, tab on Excel, on a view, and go to freeze panes and click on freeze pane. That's going to freeze these columns and these rows. So if you scroll to the right, you can always see this box. It's a great way to see the whole picture. And especially if you're out of screen, if you need to scroll all the way down, you can see what are you editing. Even if I gave my best to give a pop out that that tells you information about each cell. Same thing when you scroll down. So when you scroll down to football rated training, you can see the top couple of columns that are basically constraining all your choices down till the end of the sheet. So let's cover. I'm gonna unfreeze it for the purpose of these examples, but just you can do this. So go to unfreeze. As you can see now, everything is scrolling down. Football training. As we said, each box has a couple of common columns. This is phase, subphase, number of games. As I said, this is automatic. Type of the microcycle. Sorry, it's a link. Type of the microcycle. In this case, number of sessions, and manual load if I want to enter it. In football-related training box, I've set up different components that represent the phases of a game. So we have offense, defense, offensive and defensive transition, and offensive and defensive set pieces. There's a game shape and there's individual technique. This is used to set up a given objective or team in certain blocks or certain phases you want to focus on, depending on a phase of a game. So let's start by selecting a phase. So, I'm just going to put some random phases, just for an example. Say, this is a GPP, as we said, first 4 weeks is a GPP, so you might select phase 1. As I said, all the cells are drop-down lists, and you can edit them. So let's say I want to edit this phase. I click here, as you can see, it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Let's say I want to call this, I don't know, basic or team building. And let's say we have 2 different subphases, might be technique and, I don't know, tactics. And this might be strategy. It doesn't matter, it's up to you how you want to name it and everything. So let's say, as we said, this is a team building phase. I want to make it 4 weeks. Go to a merge. It's going to merge these cells and you can color code it. Let's say you're going to take green, and subphase, this might be technique phase. Let's say for 2 weeks. Again, merge. You don't need to merge it though, but it's easier later to change it. But it's also harder to unmerge it. So let's say this is red. I'm gonna focus on tactics or these 2, just for the sake of example. Again, color code. I will stick to certain amount of colors. You don't want to have everything like flashing to your eyes. So keep the bright colors for certain indicators. I use the red for games, and that's the most important aspect. So I would say stick to that. So let's say this is strategy. Again, merge, and let's say this color. Next one is the type of the microcycle. Again, it's a list, and it's usually like a given setup of lists: a base, load, impact, unload, variety, taper, competition, pre-competition, recovery, and shock. Again, you can change all of these, but I also just stick to your own classification, and try to keep it across different training components. Now, the trick part is should the type of the microcycle be defined for all the training components, like over here, or should each training component has a different type of the microcycle? I would say the second example, because you can make a shock microcycle in terms of a special conditioning and base microcycle in terms of strength training. So it doesn't necessarily need to be all encompassing to all the different components. So let's say it's usually we start with the base one where we are building up the workload. This might be load, then we can maybe unload the guys over here. These 2 rows are used to quantify the volume, or sorry, the load for each week, to give you some indication of progression of the workloads for this component for football training. Again, this is not nothing related to real workload. It's just like planning. You can use to compare what the progression and what's planned and what's realized, and you can use different stuff when assessing what's realized. Might be GPS data, might be subjective indicators, might be trim scores or whatever. So I provided two choices over here. First one is manual. You can enter some manual data. So let's say base is 100 points. This might be 150, 200, and unload, let's say 125. Or we can go below base, it doesn't matter that much. Sometimes the Spark lines don't refresh, but make sure to click on them, and then they're gonna refresh. As you can see, I put the loads for football training, and they're automatically calculated for the total training workload, because I select the football training load to be included in a total training load. If I select number of sessions, so let's say this might be 3 sessions a week, this might be 4, maybe 5, and I switch back to 4. As you can see, for each session I get 20 points, so 3 times 20 is 60, and those are example of weighting factors. And I can set up weighting factors for number of sessions by clicking over here or going to the last tab at the end. It's called weighting factors. So let's say I go back to an annual plan. I want to set up the weighting factor for each session. So I go over here. No, sorry, this is a drop-down list for number of sessions. You go back to training loads. Click over here and find the football training. So for each point, for each session, we get 20 points. And for each manual load, if I write 100, I'm gonna get 100. If I put this to 2, you're gonna get 200. So let's say I change this to 1 again, and I go back to annual plan. I'm gonna get 3, 4, 5, and 6 as I wrote over here. So this is example of how to use weighting factors to assign certain workload. The same principle works for every other training component and total training load. So this one basically sums all these and also assign them a weighting factor. So for example, for football training, since this is the only one at the moment included, it's equal to football training, so it's 3, 4, 5, and 6. If I change weighting factor by clicking over here or going to the last tab, it's going to change how much points I give to football training. So this is the total load box. At the moment, it's one how you say it in English? It's one point per point for football training. So depending on these factors, you can give more weight to a given component. So let's say I want to multiply this by 10, and I go back to annual plan. So as you can see, it's 30, 40, 50, and 40 again. So this is 3 times 10, 30, and so on. So that's how the weighting factors work for everything. You can check them in the last tab, or depending on a training component, you can click on the link in a control box. So going back to a football training, in the offense, I can select, since I'm working on a technique, this block, I can select given theme or objective. I created a drop-down list, which you can edit again by clicking over here or going to a football constants tab. So going over here, I can select passing, receiving, or whatever you're working on, or whatever it's under your own training philosophy. So I go back to annual plan. I'm working on passing over here. I mean, you cannot receive without passing, but anyway, I'm receiving over here. Same with anything else. You can merge these, extend them, and color code it. Same thing for every other component. So in offense, again, I have a certain list, These are just basic example. I can go over here to the offense, over here. So this might be 1v1 duels. This might be 2v1. Since I'm working on offense, maybe crossing. And I go back to the annual plan. This doesn't need to be necessarily you're working only on that element of the offense, but it might be something you're putting some certain emphasis during certain blocks. So let's say I'm working, going back here, I'm working on crossing for 3 weeks. I'm gonna merge. One thing you can also do, since you're limited by a room in the cells, you can assign a comment for each cell. So for example, you go to a review, I think, and you go click on a cell and you say new comment. So you can write the comment, maybe crossing under pressure, or whatever it's meaningful for you. If you click deselect it, you click on this one, you give certain information about your team or whatever. You can do this for every single cell. For example, going back here, training camp heat, it might be meaningful to you, say maybe train hard, train high, sleep low, or something. That's also certain approach in a heat training at the moment. So you sleep in a AC room and train at the heat. So might be 40 Celsius training. Same thing over here for every single cell. One thing you can use is, as we said, for a given day in a given week, you can also write a comment, or as I said, you can click on it and it's going to take you to that given week, as I showed in the video number 1. That's how the things are solved with the skill-related training. Again, you can select this one by right-clicking. The left click is going to take you on a link. You can edit it. Let me just see. Might be format cell, or go over here. You can maybe change it to basketball if you're using this sheet for basketball training. Same thing for every other component. Maybe you can add or change, or do whatever you want with the annual plan. Strength training. It's, as we said, the first couple of rows are pretty similar between the components. First one gives you the phase. Second one is a subphase. This one is a general indicator on the amount of games being played on that week. This is a microcycle type. Again, all these are drop-down menus, and they're all specific to a certain training component. So you can change this one without affecting anything else. So you can click on this one, and for this, I pick up the stuff used by Joe Can. So it's based on his classification of the strength training microcycle types. You can always put a note to describe, or you can also put a certain comment. While we are here, the weekly schedule, it's related to training frequency. So this is the thing I did manual, and if you plan using this one, you should also do it manually. So 1F means it's one session, one full body sessions a week. This is 2F, means two full body session. One U is for upper body and L is for lower body. So this is 2 sessions a week. One is upper, one is lower. So total frequency is 2. And the one that's usually common is 2 upper body and 2 lower body sessions, which means we are training 4 times a week. Going back to annual plan, that's a weekly schedule. So let's say I'm going to start building up something. First phase is going to be, let's say, anatomic adaptation. I'm going to merge it. Color code. Let's this color, and change and this one might be you know, up to green, might be maximum strength. Again, as I said, it's good to freeze paints so you can quickly see these periods, since they are constraining everything down, going down. This is the forest. You know, you need to see the forest for the trees, so it will be wise to freeze the paint so you can see the already predefined periods, testing dates, and peaking index. Anyway, subphase, anything that's meaningful for you, might be accumulation phase, intensification, volume phase, might be squat cycle, might be bench press cycle, whatever you used to. Microcycle type, as I said, it's base, load, performance, and again you can change all of this. The whole strength training component is based on the concept of relative intensity. And I'm going to show you quickly how everything is being used. If you go to relative intensity by clicking over here, here is our repetition chart. These percentages are based on Dan Baker work on experienced lifters. So this is 1 RM, 2 RM, 3 RM, and this is percent relationship with 1 RM. So if you do squats for 5, the maximum weight you can use is 86% of your maximum. Using it, you know, using 86% for 5 reps means you can't do any more reps. That's your 5 RM, and that means you are using 100% of relative intensity. Relative intensity is basically a proximity of failure. So we can scale all of these. If you're training 5 sets of 5, you're gonna hardly be able to repeat 5 sets with 86%, because each set is gonna bring up to your maximum exhaustion, maximum effort at the last rep. So you can maybe use heavy, using 90% relative intensity, which corresponds to using 76%. So that's around 10% less. This is also based on work by Donald Boucher, and I'm really thankful to him for this one, since it's a pretty nice concept, and it's pretty simple to visualize it. You can edit these percentage. You can edit the percent rep table also if you use something else. In this example, I use for each cell it's 2.5% less. So dropping from this cell to this cell for each one is 2% less. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. As I said, you can change it, especially for higher reps. It might be a bigger drop that might be needed to be the similar in relative intensity for a given set and reps. So going back to annual plan, these rows basically represent types of the microcycle. It gives you a nice look of how the things are progressing over time. So let's say in an anatomic adaptation phase, we progress from 70% relative intensity, 75, and 80, peaking up to maybe 85. Maximum strength, let's start with the base, might be 80, 85, 90, and 95. If you're using certain testing or strength test, you might indicate it in this row. Testing, you might say strength test, and you know you need to use 100%, which means either testing reps to failure or testing 1 RM. And now you're going to see the quick and a neat way how these are utilized automatically using the mention and the repetition table. So we have main lifts, assistant lifts, Olympic lifts, and ballistic lifts. For these two, intensity, absolute intensity, the one that's used on the barbell, it's set up manually. For the main lifts, I also have a drop-down menu. Let's say anatomic adaptation, I'm going to start with 2 sets of 12, going to 3 sets of 12, and going to 4 sets of 12. Apparently, I just discovered a bug, which I'm gonna fix. So immediately I get the percentage I need to put on the barbell. So if you go to let's say maximum strength, I want to do 5 sets of 5. 5 sets of 5 at 80% of relative intensity. That means using 66. If I extend this through the whole cycle, you can see I'm progressing in a percentage being used absolutely. So, sorry, this needs to be 5 times 5, 5 times 5, 5 times 5. So 90% relative intensity for 5 reps. You can quickly check that in a strength training over here. 5 reps, we said 80%. No, sorry, 90%. That's 76. 76% of 1 RM that needs to be used on the barbell, so we get it automatically, 76. The volume is amount of total amount of reps, and IRV is a relative volume. It's basically multiplying 25 with 76%. That should be visualized over here, which I'm gonna fix. Probably some error. Same thing for assistant lifts. Olympic lifts, you also select the drop down. Too many reps for Olympic lift. So it's, let's say, 3 sets of 3, and you manually enter the weight that needs to be used, maybe 80%. Same thing with skill-related training. You can select either main lifts, assistant lifts, Olympic lifts, or ballistic lifts that include bench throw or squat jump. Which one you want to assign to a training load. In this case, the training load is relative volume multiplied by training frequency. So in this case, there's no error. I didn't put the weekly schedule. So let's say we did 3 full body sessions. Same here. So that's good, there's no bug. It's just me being quick on design. So we have 3 full body sessions. Same over here, 3F. You can do it manually. So here's the thing. I can select the main lifts. Now it's 0. If I select the main lifts, this number is going to be multiplied by weighting factor for main lifts. As I said, you can set all the weighting factors by either clicking over here or going to a red tab at the end of the tabs in the bottom. So in this case, let's click over here. We can see that for strength training, we're given the highest weighting factor for main lifts, which is normal. I suggest using 3:1 for the main lifts. You can give different weighting factors for Olympic lifts and ballistic one. Let's say I set up this for 2:1 and go back to annual plan. This should be 30, because 9 times 8, 9.8 times 3, which is frequency, should be around 30. There's a rounding factor. So if I change this to 1 full session, it's gonna be 9.8, and I didn't want to put the decimal number over here, so it's rounded to closest integer. And that's how the things work. 3F. If I have some assistant lifts, I'm gonna put them over here. Same thing Maybe this phase is going to be pretty similar. And just for the sake of example, I'm going to continue using 10 reps for the maximum strength phase. One more time, there's no bug. It's only me not feeling this because we don't know the frequency of training. I cannot calculate approximate workload. So as you can see, the main lifts are included now. If I deselect them and select only assistance, it's going to give me this number, 9.8 times weighting factor times frequency. I'm going to get number 30. All of these again are summed up in a total training load, again giving a weighting factor for strength training or football related training and other training components. Again, you can deselect these. Sometimes click on a sparkline to refresh. So these are only strength related workloads. If I want to see only skill related workloads, or if I want to sum them up, it's going to give me total indicator of workloads. Going back to the strength training, if you delete certain cells, some of the cells you can delete, just select and delete. Some of them you can't. You better not do because they are not protected. So all these automatic cells you shouldn't touch basically. So if you want to delete this, you select these and then delete. That's why I suggest having a copy of this workbook in the case you want to start over, because it's a lot easier to start over than delete and maybe accidentally delete some of the automatic cells. I didn't protect them for the purpose of being able to modify it any way you want it. So going back to the strength training, if you don't want to see some of the stuff on screen, you can go to view, go to headings, and select the given rows. Given rows that you don't want to see or you are not using. Sometimes the box is gonna pop out, but you can move it or you can delete it if you're not using, for example, Olympic lifts. You don't want to see it. The thing with main lifts and assistant lifts, I'm using the relative intensity to calculate the absolute intensity that needs to be put on the barbell, because it gives me some nice indication how the things progress over time. If you check this maximum strength block, which is five sets of 5, someone might say this is not periodized, but as you can see, it is, because the effort or the exhaustion at the end of set is progressively higher. So we are using slightly higher percentage over the weeks, even if the number of sets and reps is the same. So I'm using the relative intensity for main lifts and assistant lifts. For Olympic lifts, you cannot use it because it's quite different in terms of effort, and might be non-linear or something. Same thing for ballistic lifts. You can use simple formula for calculating intensity for the manual. These are drop-down list, so you can select the percentage. The thing, if you don't want a drop-down list, you can select the cells and go to a data. Go to data validation and clear all. So these are related. You're gonna get a list, and this is name range I use to name all the drop-down lists for percentages. You can clear it. Click OK. So these cells are now empty. One approach that I'm familiar that Dan Baker used in certain blocks is to use half the intensity of the main lift. So if you're using 41%, which is quite low, for example, in this anatomic adaptation phase, for the ballistic lifts, you use half of it. So you might say equal 0.5 multiplied with this cell, and you can extend it. This one is empty, so it's going to give an error, and you can select the given amount of reps and sets. Usually the ballistic lifts are done 3 to 4 or more sets of 5 to 6. So we can select 3 times 6. Same over here. You can write it or you can select it from a drop down. There ain't gonna be any error when they're equal. So this is how you can select the ballistic lifts. As you can see, these are related to some form of a general progression in your blocks. You can always put a comment using a review tab, put a comment, because maybe you have, this might be related to a squat, and you might have different cycle for some other core lift, might be deadlift, so you might not use a same percentage and same relative intensity. The thing is, there's a trade-off between precision and you know, having a big picture. If you want to see a big picture, you cannot be so precise because you're gonna lose the big picture. You're gonna lose the forest for the trees. So this might be related to some of the key workouts and key exercises. If you're let's say in these, you know, main lifts, one lower body lift might be squat, the second one might be also squat, but it might be 10% less. So one way for me to know it is to actually put it in a daily calendar, which we said here in the training sessions. You can write it over here, or you can probably put a comment over here. New comment might be, let's say, first workout. Is 41%, second is maybe 5% less, and that's 36%. These percentages are weird, but just for sake of example. So this might be back squat, this might be front squat. So this is how you can give some information to yourself when you write down the more precise strength training programs. As I said, these are only related to some form of a key exercise or key session within your week, and these are again arbitrary units that you give a weighting factor and gives you some estimation how you are progressing in terms of workload over weeks. So that's it for this installment. In the next one, I'm going to cover speed training and power training. Hopefully, talk more about specific conditioning and how the things are organized, because this is pretty much the fun part, especially for the soccer-related coaches out there, and general conditioning. Some of the solutions here are quite unique and gives you a pretty neat overview of what's happening and how to progress your cycles, especially for a specific conditioning and small-sided games and general conditioning using maximum aerobic speed. I'm gonna come to this in the next couple of videos. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.